People are very much on edge. They're very nervous. And there's good reason to be. I'll talk more about that and about the language of fascism that Donald Trump is using and about the deployment of troops in certain ways in certain cities in the United States. But what I really want to make sure you grasp is that this administration is enormously brittle. They are making performative attempts to look as if they are in control, but they are extraordinarily brittle. And what I mean by that is that, first of all, as you probably have gathered, Donald Trump is not in good health. You know, if you have watched any of his recent performances, which are long, you'll see that he keeps his right hand hidden. Today, in a press opportunity, he kept it under the top of the desk. That's because it is very, very badly bruised, apparently from some sort of an IV line in it. I am not a doctor or a nurse, and I'm only reporting to you what I have heard, but it is clear that this is an issue for him. Sometimes he covers it with makeup. And sometimes he simply tries to hide it. But to me, the physical side of his deterioration, whether it's his hand or his badly swollen ankles, is of less note than his mental deterioration.
Brothers and sisters, Mr. Donald Trump is losing it all. And according to how the world is going today and everyone is viewing the United States, people are seeing to it that he is a weak man. And indeed, he's a weak man because you could see the moves that he's making. He's a person who has already lost, but he's trying to find a way to create a crisis, to create chaos, to make people be confused, right? Because you realize that he's creating a criminal crisis in the United States, in places like Chicago, in places like New York, in places like all these black dominated places. Why do you think so? Because he's playing into the stereotype that black people are always the problem causes. And so, even with these recent health issues that he's been having, what is the symbolism towards this? It's a symbolism of a weak person. It's brittle administration. It's so hard, but yet very liable to break it. And that's the stage where Mr. Donald Trump is. He is a weak man, and everyone is seeing him for who he is, according to the moves that he is making. And so, brothers and sisters, I'm inviting you to watch this video. Right? It is really, really important that you understand at this point, the only way Mr. Donald Trump can thrive is by creating chaos, is by criminalizing the black community, is by making the black community look like people who are making a lot of mistakes and taking the black community back to the Jim Crow, because that's all its plan, just to create chaos, and to thrive in the chaos, because that's what he can do. He is a fascist, and that's what he's good at, and that's what he's going to do. So, brothers and sisters, I invite you to watch this video by this scholar called Etha Cox. She's really, really important, and she's going to share with you an important message that it's going to help us really understand the perspective where she comes from and understanding who really Mr. Donald Trump is and the plans that he's been having. He's giving an explainer that is really, really important. A brutal administration inventing a crisis. And this is the explainer. So watch the video. I'll be back and then I'll be sharing my thoughts. So those watching it for the first time, I'm asking you to please subscribe to the channel, join the membership, and really get to what I can offer you. But until then, let's watch the video. I'll be back with my commentary as usual.
People have said, what do you mean? He's always been, off the wall, and you couldn't tell what he was saying. And I'm afraid I'm going to disagree with that. If you look at videos from him in the 1980s, he was very much on his game. You didn't have to agree with him, and maybe he wasn't, Einstein, but he was witty and he was quick and he could do an interview and he could finish a sentence. And that was already deteriorating by 2016, but he still, in the 2016 campaign, could hold an audience in a sort of impressionistic way. A lot of people didn't want to hear that, but it was true. And people liked to go to his rallies because they felt like they were seeing a performance, kind of. And maybe the words were not in kind of the order that one would normally expect them to be, but it was kind of like watching somebody improvise on themes that you had heard before. That's gone now. He is no longer able to do much except sort of hit some themes, but they're really incoherent. And rather than playing to the crowd the way he could do even in 2016, he now basically just lists his own grievances and talks about how great he is, which is not a great way to grab an audience. So you can watch him deteriorate mentally, and also you can see that he is unable to function in the real world at this point. His reflections, for example, yesterday on the idea that that the 7 European leaders who rushed to the White House on Monday after Trump's disastrous performance with Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, in Alaska on August 15th, were somehow cheering him on when it was pretty clear they were trying to stabilize him and stabilize what the U.S. foreign policy would look like. He not only seemed to misunderstand what was going on there, but he also said that those 7 people represented 38 countries and that they referred to him as the president of Europe. And just to be clear, I think he is just constantly he's in such a fantasy world that he is constantly blowing larger and larger his sense of self-importance to compensate for the fact he knows how deeply unpopular he is. So again, you will also see him boast that he has solved 7 or now maybe it's 10 wars. I mean, that's all just fantasy crap that doesn't work. You're also seeing his handlers, the people around him, really encouraging him to put his time into the kinds of performances that he cares about. So he's doing a lot of remodeling, both of the White House and of, the Rose Garden, which he paved to look quite a bit like Mar-a-Lago, and has put in a sound system that is the same as the one at Mar-a-Lago or similar to it. So he can play DJ on his iPad. He's talked about getting rid of the east wing of the White House and replacing it with this giant event space. We've seen him walking on the roof of the White House with an architect. Now he is talking about remodeling the Kennedy Center, and he's talking a lot about the different sort of landscaping things that he's going to do around Washington, D.C. These are not normally the concerns of a United States president. These are the concerns, it seems, of somebody whose real heart is in real estate and is getting older and incapacitated. So people are urging him to spend his time and his energy there. You're also seeing, you're also seeing his loyalists really just over the top, exaggerating how wonderful he is in ways that are reminiscent of the sort of ways that the sycophants of somebody like the head of North Korea talks to him. And that's about soothing his ego and making him feel better than he is. So the whole reason I went into that detail is because while he is out there trying to pretend that he is a strong man or a dictator, he's actually crumbling. He's actually a very, very weak man personally and mentally. And I think there's a real attempt to shore him up by the people around him so that they can put in place some form of authoritarianism. So it won't matter if he's there any longer, because certainly if you look at J.D. Vance and how they are positioning him next to Trump or behind Trump frequently. He's doing a lot more media now. It certainly seems as if they are preparing him to step into place should he need to do that sooner rather than later. But J.D. Vance is not popular, so it's not clear how much they're going to be able to accomplish with J.D. Vance in that seat. So first of all, the head of the administration is in really poor shape. But then secondly, Trump is underwater on everything, every single one of his issues, and his own job approval rating is also in the wasn't the word I was looking for, the gutter. Let's put it that way. It's not in good shape. His approval ratings hover. If you put them all together, there's some trackers that do it every day. They have him in the 40s at most, and that's not a good place to be this early into an administration. As I say, that is the average of all of them taken together. That's not some that show him really deeply underwater. But you can really see how concerned the White House is about where Trump's approval rating is by this sudden push to insist that America is being destroyed by crime. And this is really interesting because they're inventing a new issue that they hope he can get traction on. And it's an issue that fascists often rise to power on by saying, you know, I'm the only person who can save you from crime. And they're really, really trying hard to hit that. So, for example, yesterday, I don't know if you were watching, but the administration had Trump sign an executive order in which he claimed that he claimed this, that he would insist that anybody who was caught burning a flag would automatically get a year in jail. Well, he has no power to do that. That's just not even in the purview of the president. And flag burning was protected by the U.S. Supreme Court by a 5-4 decision in 1989. But there's two things going on there, I think. One is that in his discussion of the executive order, Trump said, "Oh, everybody is burning flags. It's so terrible. You know, this is such a terrible thing. And, you know, we have to stop this flag burning." When was the last time you heard of anybody burning a flag? I mean, I was like, what? Flag burning? And that's really interesting because that was a really big deal in the 1980s, obviously leading to the Supreme Court decision, and then and then the discussion of whether or not it should be protected speech after that. In many ways, Trump is reverting to the 1980s, a time when he felt like he was very powerful. At least one puff piece writer called him the King of New York City. And he clearly feels comfortable in that gaudy world of the 1980s when he appeared to be at the top of his game. But at the same time, they are clearly trying to tell the American people that there's a crisis that they are aware of that none of the rest of us are. And in the last several decades, really, violent crime especially has been plummeting around this country. And one of the caveats that Democrats keep saying is, we know we have to do better. We know we have to do better. Well, here's a news flash. We always have to do better on crime. But cities don't have any monopoly on crime. Those of us in the country will know very well. And the idea that you combat crime by turning the military against the US public is bonkers. I mean, what Trump and the administration have done is they have cut funding to anti-crime prevention programs, which have worked really well. So in Washington, D.C., for example, violent crime is at a 30-year low. And those are according to the statistics from the Department of Justice. So this is not, you know, somebody trying to pull them out of thin air. Similarly, violent crimes in Chicago have plummeted. Now, there was a spike during COVID, but it's a little hard to read that into this entire long past when, in fact, violent crime has been dropping over the last 30 years. So you can really see Trump and especially Stephen Miller, the deputy White House chief of staff, doubling down on this idea that there's terrible, terrible, terrible crime. And to that end, you are constantly seeing Trump talking about how he has saved Washington, D.C., and now suddenly people feel able to go out, and now they can go to restaurants and so on. That is completely made up. And if you have ever spent any time in Washington, D.C., you will know it's completely made up, and that those troops are there for visibility. More than they are for actually doing anything, not least because they are not stationed in the parts of DC that have crime issues. They are stationed in the very public areas down the National Mall, for example, or close to the White House. But you're also seeing Stephen Miller, who I say sounds increasingly frantic, going on TV and talking about how terrible crime is. He said last night, and I pulled this quote because I thought it was really interesting. He said that that crime is so bad in the cities, especially in Washington, D.C., that the criminals in Washington, D.C. are working with transnational crime organizations. And then he went on to do something very interesting. And that's that he began to say that he began to equate Democrats with criminals. This is a quote. The Democrat, and that was used by Rush Limbaugh as an insult to Democrats. So they called the Democrat Party as opposed to the Democratic Party. And that's always a sign you can tell that somebody's just being a jerk. He says the Democrat Party does not fight for, care about, or represent American citizens. It is an entity devoted exclusively to the defense of hardened criminals, gangbangers, and illegal alien killers and terrorists. The Democrat Party is not a political party, it is a domestic extremist organization. And then he goes on to talk about how DC residents were afraid to go to restaurants. They were getting carjacked right and left. They were robbed and they were getting beaten. And now suddenly there are no homicides in Washington D.C. thanks to Donald Trump. In fact, DC has seen many weeks without homicides in this year alone. But and then he goes on to say, Democrats, instead of jumping up and down and saying, thank you, President Trump, thank you for saving our lives, thank you for saving our cities, thank you for scrubbing away all the graffiti, the trash, the homeless encampments, the druggies, instead of cleaning up the city, instead of thanking for that, they're saying, President Trump, how dare you save our lives? How dare you save our children? How dare you save our souls? And then he goes on to attack the Democratic Party more thoroughly. But I think what you can see there is real frustration with the fact that having put in place their ideology, that America would be better off if you got rid of undocumented immigrants, people of color, and so on, that they really thought people would like this. And the fact that white Americans, as well as those Americans being attacked, also don't like it is an issue of great frustration for Miller. And he seems to be lashing out and saying, how dare you not thank us for this? And now today, once again, Trump suggested that because of how bad crime is, people are asking him to be a dictator. And, you can see him sort of trying to make sense of the argument that he should become a dictator. And yet, this is extraordinarily unpopular, and you are seeing people really pushing back against it.
Hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the channel. It's important that you understand how all this comes into play, because a weak person or a falling person or a losing person will find a way of falling with anything that they can grasp. And Mr. Donald Trump is in his last stages of falling with anything that comes across him. While he might seem like he knows every move that he's making and is trying to find a perfect America. They call it America first, right? But trying to find a perfect America by criminalizing, by deporting, by fighting against the Black history. And do you know how it began by doing this? It began by banning or revoking Black museums. All these museums that had all this important information about history. Because if you want to kill a generation, make sure that they don't know what happened in the past about them. And that's what he was always trying to fight. Why do you think all this fight is forwarded towards the Black community? That's an important question, and I'm here to answer you. The reason as to why I feel, I'm not a political expert, disclaimer, but I feel like he is pushing all this towards the Black community. He is venting into, not really venting, but he is banking onto the stereotype of the Black criminals, the Black use of drugs, the Black gun violence. He is banking on that to use it against people, to make people be confused, and to bring all this war and to make Black people look like bad people. But at the end of it all, he is making other moves silently. Before you think about it, he has passed a policy that you don't even know, right? And it's here to affect majority of these people. And so this is a weak man. That's why he's making all those desperate moves that you're seeing making, right? Why do you think they're doing this to the Black people? They're doing this to the Black people because Black people can help fight all these crazy things that are happening out here. Because when a revolution starts, it starts with the Black people. They help fight with the Black people. And so it's important for you to understand that we are at a point of seeing a failed man trying to fall desperately with anything that comes across him. and that's Mr. Donald Trump. And that's what he's trying to do. And it's important for the world. And I'm glad that everyone, the world, is seeing him for who he is, right? Because that's who he is. And it's important for you to understand that it's not going to be changing anytime soon, because the only way that is going to be changing is by him getting out of the seat and finding the new administration, finding a person that can really run the United States in a proper way, right? And so people also talked about this, and I feel like it's important to share, always talk about people's opinion, because there's a perspective that I might not say, but there's a person that who will talk about it, right? Somebody's saying that I am a physician, ignore the and. An IV can be placed in so many places other than ends. There are so many options. I am way more concerned about other issues stated. The and is just a distraction. There are, slate of the and. We must not be distracted by his actions or words. We must focus on his handlers. Remember, this man was a reality TV show host. He and his handlers are masters of distraction. And that's what I've just said. They are always trying to create a situation for you to be distracted. It began with his hands swelling and people getting distracted that, oh, Mr. Donald Trump's gonna die. Mr. Donald Trump is sick. But at the end of the day, it didn't. And his hands is healing. Right? Before you think about it, right now, this criminalization of the black community. Before you think about it, something has happened. Again, something else will come. So there's always a distraction. And that's why you understand why there's so much information bombarding you in regards to Mr. Donald Trump, because that's his own way of making you confused, of making you focus on the wrong things instead of seeing the things that he's doing and taking him the way it is. Somebody's saying that I'm trying to look at a comment that really makes sense, right? Somebody's saying that time for revolution. We are in a very poignant memory in history. It's time up to the people to stand their grounds, rise up and fight all these injustices. This is a black person who wrote down this comment. Why did I talk about a black person? Because right now it's targeting the black community, because black community is always thinking about the revolution of bringing change to these places, the revolution of removing the administration that doesn't serve. And so one of the most strategies is to remove black people by first putting black people into prison, bring back war on drugs, make it look like black people are using so much drugs, make it look like there is so much gun violence, because once the troops are being installed in these black communities like Chicago, you know what's next to happen. There is so much gun violence that's going to be happening. People are going to fight back, right? And so they'll find a way, they'll find a bait of keeping black people where they are. I'm also looking at somebody saying that according to Michael Wolff, an inside source at the Alaska meeting said Trump told Putin that the US and Russia were on the same side during the Cold War. I don't think Trump even knows what the term Cold War means or what it involved. I remember it because neighbors were building bomb shelters in their basements, and we all thought we might die. The topic was in hundreds of TV shows like The Twilight Zone and many movies. So I agree. Trump has serious mental deterioration. Somebody saying that I was in the comments of local news piece about Trump's takeovers of various cities. There were so many people praising him for cleaning up our dangerous cities and making comments such as clearly Democrats just hate law and order. The irony of this rhetoric compared to the very easily discernible facts about crime rates never fails to floor me. The echo chambers is getting smaller, but it is still thriving, right? Somebody is saying that, in quotes, for I am the ruler of all I see, more like Yetl, the turtle every day, looking forward to the appearances of the plain little turtles named Mark. Quotes, I know up on the top you are seeing great sights, but down at the bottom, we too should have rights. Dr. Seuss knew it all along. Gaze Donald didn't read back then either. Somebody also said that I think it is addressing the professor. Hi, professor. Just throwing out there. I'm not an expert either, but both my mom and grandpa suffered from congestive heart failure. When the condition worsens, the swelling is very noticeable. Feet, ankles, hands, face. I knew my poor mom was getting bad when her eyes and face were puffy all the time, even with medication adjustments. The peak that was circulating online over the weekend, where many conspiracy theories were claiming it wasn't him. No, that was him. His face is terribly bloated. That's why it looks different. Believe me, when people you love have had this condition, you pay attention and notice things others may not. He may have other medical issues as well, but I would have been shocked if he didn't have CHF. Right. Also going to be looking at another comment, second last comment. Somebody is saying that I feel a mountain full of anxiety rush off my shoulder. But I have to pray that I hope you are right. For people who care, this is terrible time. Waiting for someone to do something against what was perceived as a national threat. The first legitimate one is a lifetime. You are the first voice who seemed to put things in perspective. Thank you. Somebody is saying, and this is the last comment that I'm going to be reading, it cannot be that there are no safeguards to prevent this type of person from holding public office. It must be acknowledged that psychopathy and narcissism are mental health issues that are incapacitated a person from fulfilling their role. There should be some political neutral institution filter or a medical psychiatrist council to evaluate the mental health of candidates. Once in power, they are easily exploited by interest parties, and societies also become a victim of the symptoms of the patients. I'm your host and presenter, Jidok Stories. But until then, please let me know what you think about this video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.